Hi, I'm Dave Edwards. Viewers of this segment have been sending in questions for me to ask David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done. So it is your turn to ask David. And by the way, if you have questions for David that I can ask him in future segments, just email me, daveedwards@outlook.com. Okay, it's time to ask David.
You know, I just have so much fun being able to ask you all of my questions about productivity. But after the last conversation, I actually got emails from some folks who watch this, who asked me to ask you certain questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share other questions.
Hey,
Other
let's
people,
go.
they'll probably be a lot better than mine. um,
We'll
one
see.
one of our viewers named Kelvin writes, I really enjoy your conversations with David Allen. I've been using GTD for a few years now, and I have one burning question. What suggestions does David have when your work environment is so ad hoc, with managers and executives expecting you to monitor your email and respond rapidly and do other things all day long?
Talk to somebody. What are your agreements with them? What are the standards you're holding? If you're just at effect of other people's activities and behaviors, find out, what am I not doing? Give me an example. What are you talking about? And find out specifically what they're asking about. Are they just ranting about whatever? And mostly, managers and bosses or whatever are railing at people being out of control because they are. Trust me, if they were in control, they would not have those issues. They'd have already figured out how to fix it. They already figured out what they needed to communicate with you about that. They already figured out what was not wrong or not right about what you were doing. They're just ranting and raving. So
hmm I think
I'm just
maybe
writing it. I'm just writing something for our next book about the fact that uh, most people, when they start to change their standards, start to recognize people who haven't changed those standards, and they get very frustrated. So we don't make any pretensions about job retention or job satisfaction. Once you get GTD, you may leave because you're going to start to discover some things that are uncomfortable to you, that you don't like, that are frustrating to you, and you can't stand it unless you have some patience to hang out with them, and maybe they can change or leave,
yeah.
get to an environment that more appreciates and how you do what you do.
Yeah, when I was thinking about Kelvin's question, the thing that struck me was that because I always advise people, and I've done this in my career, where I've had to go to my boss and say, "You've given me 8 things to do. Help me figure out what's the most important thing that's gonna make you happy." But I think that the issue that Kelvin raises is a work environment where it's kind of the culture of we got to be on email all the time. We got to be instantly responsive, and maybe what you just said is part of the answer. You might have to leave an organization like that.
Well, if I were coaching this person individually, I'd say, give me a specific example where that showed up and you got that feedback, and let's see what happened. Because people exaggerate and generalize like crazy, and then they make all kinds of bizarre assumptions, about life and their work and their job. So I can't make a generalized discussion about, well, I could generalize the answer. That says, well, look, find out, what's expected of you by when, what does the culture expect? Look, these days when you have Slack and Teams and Google Meet and all that stuff showing up, what's in your in basket? What's not? What's just streaming of media that you need to then make sure you get conscious about what you capture out of those things that you need to do something about, that you handle. There's a lot of issues that are showing up simply because of all the channels that are showing up that these companies are using. And when they say somebody's not, doing what they expect to be doing, I go, why? And what?
Mhm.
What do they expect? They want an answer to an email or a Slack note or to a Teams meeting note or whatever. By when? And then you decide whether you agree to that or not, or whether you say, is there any flexible latitude about that?
Mhm.
So again, the question is a big generalized, hyperbolized sort of example. But yeah, I understand it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of unconsciousness, but
Mhm. Good.
it's an unevolved, it's a relatively unevolved planet.
Here's another question. Stephen emailed me and he said, I'd like to hear more about how David manages his task list when he's away from his computer. In other words, does he do this electronically on an iPad or an iPhone? Does he print out his task list and carry a paper option with him? How do you do it, David?
Well, I do almost all of my work, in my workstation. So I don't do any work. I don't work on my iPhone. I don't work on my iPad. I don't work on when I leave here, where I'm sitting and talking to you. I don't do any of that work. Yeah, I may, pull up my iPhone while I'm waiting for a tram or waiting for a train or whatever, and either do, words with friends or delete old junk email or whatever out of it. That's all I do. I don't do any work there.
Well,
And because I keep email,
what advice do
well,
you
look,
have for
because I
someone
keep,
like Stephen who clearly is, thinking of tasks to add to his list when he's remote? Do you need an electronic device to do that? What do you do?
fine, no. I use those. I use my low tech. It's all low tech. I don't want to click anything. There's no battery, no clicks. Because this is going to get processed. If I have an idea or an input or a thing I need to do, I need to put that into my system and then go through the clarify and organize process. Otherwise, I'm going to jump the gun and maybe give myself stuff to do I shouldn't do or need to think something about before I do it. So input is not immediately. Sometimes at a random time, sometimes I think, oh, I need to call Catherine or I need to do this, and I just make a note and that's it. But sometimes I need to think about what it is that I told myself to do. So most people are just used to their to-do list being an immediate think of it, write it on a to-do list, as opposed to clarify it and then organize it. Okay, well, do you really need to do that? Or what's the next step on that? Come on, this is the old GTD process, which unpacks that process into a much more discrete process. You don't want to take all the ingredients for your cake and throw them into one bowl. And that's what most people are doing. They're throwing here's an idea. Let me put it into this one bowl. That doesn't work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I have the note taker wallet as well, and I frequently find I'll write one or two words down on the note sheet, and then I put it in my inbox. And that space between writing it down and actually entering it into my to-do list gives me time to really think about it and clarify. I thought that's a big help for me.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
and most of the time I throw away those notes. I have them in a strange, weird idea or too much wine or whatever, and I'm like, what a dumb idea, or I can't read it.
That's my problem.
Okay, what? And I had to go to Catherine and say, Catherine, can you just decipher what I wrote down? Because I think it might have been important.
David, I used to have a notepad next to my bed. And in the middle of the night, I would, think of something as you're kind of drifting off and and I'd pull the notepad and I would scribble it. And in the morning, 90% of the time, I had no idea what I wrote.
But the 10% was cool.
Yeah, it was.
David Allen is the author of GTD, Getting Things Done. And I periodically get a chance to chat with David. And as we did in this segment, I like the idea of asking him your questions about any aspect of productivity and GTD. If you have a question for David, send me an email, daveedwards@outlook.com, and I will make sure that your question gets added for a future conversation with David Allen. By the way, I'm thinking about ramping up the production of segments about GTD here on YouTube, but I could use your encouragement. If you would like more content about GTD here on YouTube, could you please subscribe and hit the like button? I'd really appreciate it. I'm Dave Edwards. We'll talk soon.